Welcome back for another book of the Casual Animorphs book club. We have finished the first book in the series, so moving on to the second. I was checking the publication dates on these books, somewhat out of curiosity. The first book in the series was published on the 1st of June, 1996, and the second one was published on the 6th of June, 1996. So they weren't quite published in tandem. And I mean, I don't know, those of you who have more insight into the publishing industry might know why you would do that slight offset. But you probably could get the first and second book in print together pretty much immediately. The third one followed on the 1st of August, 1996. So the first three books in the series would have been available together, like as a pack, in the first Scholastic book order in September of 1996. And there wasn't a book published in the month of September 1996. I imagine they probably had to give it a minute to see how that first Scholastic book order was going to go for them. Chance, or circumstance, or romance, or any man who could get his dirty little hands on me. Hello, Matt, and hello, Emma. I don't think I have much else to say. I won't do a recap of the first book because, especially the early books in the series, there is, like always, a bit of a recap of the first couple of chapters. I was an eagle. Yeah. Then you were a dove. Today I will feel something other than regret. Pass me a glass and a half-smoked cigarette. What I will mention is that we may just have to change the Thursday evenings with this one around a little bit, because we actually are planning to go to England at the end of the month, and this is a trip that was originally planned for April of 2020 and got, delayed and postponed and rescheduled again and canceled and rescheduled. But I think I'm just this week sort of realizing that we're within 3 weeks of our departure date and the flight has not been canceled or rebooked. So this is the closest we've ever gotten. So I was thinking I might try to do 2 nights a week for this one. I had originally thought that the first book was likely to be the longest book in the series at 180 pages. But no, this one is also 175 pages, so I don't think it is a huge difference. So rather than sort of spreading it out over 5 weeks, I might try to do Wednesday and Friday next week or something. Animorphs number 2, The Visitor. The tagline on this one is, "No one knows who they are." Chapter 1. My name is Rachel. I won't tell you my last name. None of us will ever tell you our last names. Whenever I do use a last name, it's a fake. Sorry, but that's the way it has to be. And we won't tell you the name of our town, or our school, or even what state we're in. If I told you my last name, the Yerks would be able to find my friends and me. And if they ever find us, it will be the end. They might kill us, or worse. Yes, there really is something worse than death. I've seen it. I've heard the cries of despair from those doomed to be slaves of the Yerks. I've watched as the evil gray slugs writhe and squeeze in through the ear canal and take over what was a free human being. There are 5 of us. Just 5. Jake, Cassie, Marco, Tobias, and me. Marco came up with a name for us, for what we are now. He called us Animorphs. I guess that's as good a name as any for what we are. Mostly, I still just feel like a normal kid, you know? But I guess normal kids don't turn into elephants or bald eagles. And normal kids don't spend their free time fighting to save the world from the nightmares called Yerks. That day, the sun was bright. It warmed the earth below us. Warm air rose in an invisible bubble, a thermal. The thermal pushed up beneath our wings, and we circled higher and higher and higher till it almost seemed we could touch space. Somewhere up there, in cold space, up in orbit, was the Yerk mothership, perhaps right over our heads. The Yerks are parasites. In their natural state, they were just big slugs who lived in a sludgy pond called a Yerk pool. But the Yerks have the power to take control over other bodies. They have enslaved many races throughout the galaxy, the Taxon, the Hork-Bajir, and others. And now they had come to Earth, looking for more bodies to control. Who was there to try and stop them? Well, off in space there were the Andalites. But the Andalites were far away, and it would take them a long time to come to the rescue of the people of Earth. On Earth, no one knew of the Yerks. No one but 5 kids who were having fun being birds and riding thermals. I looked over at my friends. Some were a little way below, some were higher up. Jake was flapping his wings a little more than the rest of us. He had adopted a falcon morph, and falcons don't soar quite as well as hawks or eagles. Tobias was the smoothest flyer. That was partly because red-tailed hawks are natural acrobats. Partly it was because Tobias had much more practice flying than the rest of us. Too much practice. Okay, Tobias, you were right. This is the coolest thing in the world, I said. Want to try a dive? It's amazing, he said. I wasn't exactly sure that I did want to dive, but what could I say? I don't usually turn down a challenge, so I said, sure. Follow me. Tobias bent back his wings and plummeted toward the ground like a bullet. I tucked my wings back and went after him. The ground came rushing up at me. I was falling with nothing at all to stop me from splitting right into the ground. It was like a nightmare. We were going like 60 miles an hour, as fast as a speeding car. 60 miles an hour, aiming right for the ground. But even though it was scary, it was also way cool. Forget surfing, forget skateboarding, forget snowboarding. You haven't had a thrill until you've ridden the thermals a mile into the air and then gone hurtling straight down at maximum speed. Air streamed past, just like when you open the car window and you're going really fast. It was like being in the middle of a hurricane. The leading edge of my wings was battered and vibrating. I felt like... Pardon me? The leading edges of my wings were battered and vibrating. I felt my tail making dozens of tiny adjustments, moving a single feather one way or the other to keep me pointed straight. But one wrong move and I could have tumbled end over end. At this speed, if I suddenly tumbled, I feared I could break a wing. And a broken wing this high up was a death sentence. Tobias! I just realized something. What? This isn't like being an elephant. This isn't like being an elephant. If I got in trouble as an elephant, I could morph back to my human body. But I'm a long way up. If I morph back to my human body... I didn't finish the sentence, but I suddenly had this vision of me, the real me, Rachel, dropping like a stone toward the hard ground below. I guess Tobias could sense the fear that was building in me. Let the eagle do the flying, Tobias advised. Relax and let the eagle's mind do the thinking. She knows what she's doing. I'm glad one of us does, I said nervously. It's strange when you're in a morph. You have the animal's brain in with your own. Usually, usually you can control that animal intelligence, but not always. And sometimes you have to learn to let go, to let the animal take charge. I relaxed. Instantly, the vibration lessened. I felt more stable. The eagle was in charge and Tobias was right. The eagle knew how to fly. Then, to my amazement, I saw something go zipping right past us, faster than either me or Tobias. It was Jake. His peregrine falcon's smaller wings made it harder for him to float on the thermals, but those same wings made him unbelievably fast in diving. It was almost like Tobias and I were standing still. Yeah! Jake yelled in our heads. I would have smiled if I'd had a mouth. Jake is like me. He loves excitement and adventure and being a little crazy. Maybe we're so alike because we're cousins. Also, we're both a little competitive, I guess. It bothered me that he was a faster diver than I was, just like it bothered him that I could soar better. I guess that sounds ridiculous, huh? Zing! Something went right by my head. You hear that? Tobias asked. Yeah, I sure did, I said. What was it? I don't know. Instinctively, I pulled up out of the dive, straining every muscle in my wings as I opened them, and felt the shock of the wind resistance. It was like opening a parachute. The rest followed my lead. We were still a few thousand feet up, but much closer to the ground than we had been. Zing! I felt something go right through my tail feathers. Hey, someone down there is shooting at us, I said. I can see them, Cassie said. She and Marco had joined up with us. They had both morphed the same osprey. It was hard to tell them apart because you can't really tell where thought speech comes from. Two guys over in the woods. They have a rifle. I can't believe this. I was really mad. I'm an endangered species. I'm a bald eagle. What is the matter with those creeps? He's getting ready to shoot again, Marco reported. I can see him taking aim. As soon as you see the flash of the rifle, dodge hard right, I yelled. A normal eagle or hawk or falcon would not have been able to figure that out, but we weren't just raptors. We still had our human intelligence. There are times to let the animal take over. There are other times when that superior human intelligence comes in handy. There, they fired, Jake yelled. Instantly, I turned a sharp right. The bullet went whizzing by harmlessly. You know what? I don't think I like those guys, Tobias said. Tobias has special reasons for disliking anybody who would shoot a bird. Me neither, I agreed. I have an idea. I explained what I wanted to do, and the five of us flew off, out of range of the shooters. When we were far enough away, we went into a steep dive, down, down, faster and faster toward the trees. I thought I was scared diving from high up. Now I was diving at a lower altitude, aiming directly at the trees. This was a whole new level of terror. With my eagle's eyes, I could see the bark on the trees. I could see the ants on the bark of the trees. It was like those trees were right in front of us. I hope the eagle knew when to pull out of the dive. If I slammed into one of those trees at 60 miles an hour, I was spam. Capitalized spam. Then, at just the right split second, like a perfectly trained squadron of fighter jets, we opened our wings and swooshed into the trees. Unbelievable. Ha ha ha! I heard Marco yell. I don't know if that was fun or just insane. It was like some video game nightmare. We kept most of the speed from the dive, and now we were zooming through the trees so fast that tree trunks were just a brown blur all around us. Tree, bank left, tree, bank right, tree. Dozens of feathers made the slightest individual adjustments. Muscles in my wings trimmed the angle of attack, a millimeter one way, a millimeter back. Tree, 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 tree. Yeah, I yelled, half from terror and half from the total out of control thrill of it. In and out, around and through, zoom, zoom. Suddenly, there they were, just ahead in a clearing, two teenage creeps sitting on the back of a pickup truck. One guy had a blonde ponytail, the other one wore a baseball cap. They were 100 yards away. They were 100 yards away, like being all the way down a football field, but my eagle eyes were so good I could count their eyelashes. The guy with the ponytail had the rifle. The other guy was drinking a beer. They were still scanning the skies, looking for us up there. Guess what, morons? I thought as we raced at them. We're not up there anymore. We're right here, in your face. Chapter 2. They didn't even have enough time to look surprised before we struck. As a bald eagle, I was the biggest of the five of us. I could carry the heaviest load. I raked my talons forward. I opened them wide. Tobias's hawk let loose an intimidating shriek. I don't think my approximation was intimidating, so, imagine me less cute, more scary. My talons hit the gun barrel and closed on it. Tobias slashed the ponytail guy's head with his own talons. Ponytail shouted in pain and surprise and loosened his grip on the rifle. Hey! The second guy yelled. Zoom! I was out of there with the rifle in my talons. With the additional weight of the rifle, it was a struggle getting any altitude. That bird has your gun, Chester, and that other one stole my beer. I glanced over and saw Marco. At least, I think it was Marco. He had the beer can in his talons, half crumpled. They're way too young to be drinking, Marco said in his most parent-like voice. I heard the ponytail guy complaining down below. That ain't right. It ain't right that no bird should take my rifle like that. I caught a little breeze and gained just enough altitude to get above the trees, but I was having a hard time. My wings were beating the still, dead air of the woods and not getting very much lift. I scraped the top of a tall pine tree and emerged from the woods, still flapping hard to carry the weight of the rifle. I made it out toward the beach. I made it out toward the beach, over the low cliffs at the water's edge. The blessed thermals were there. They lifted me up and out over the water. I relaxed, letting the warm wind carry me higher. I dropped the rifle about a mile out in the ocean. I figured any jerk who would shoot at a bald eagle didn't need a gun. Marco dropped the beer with amazing precision right into a trash barrel. He looked as proud as he would have if he'd just thrown the winning basket in the NBA championship. I don't know how he looked that way as an osprey, but that sounds delightful. It's been almost 2 hours, Cassie warned as we lazily drifted back toward shore. 2 hours is the time limit. If you stay in a morph for more than 2 hours, you're trapped. Forever. There's an old rundown church no one uses anymore, not far from the beach. It has a bell tower, although the bell is gone. We flew there. That's where we had started from. Our clothes and shoes were still piled there. 4 pairs of shoes, for the 5 of us. Cassie, still in her osprey body, peered down at her watch lying on the floor. Good, an hour and a half. We should try never to go over an hour and a half. We began to morph back into our human bodies. Morphing takes concentration. When you're going from human to animal, it's harder. You really have to focus. But going back to human is easier. I focused on my human self. I formed a picture of myself in my mind. Tall, thin, with blonde shoulder-length hair. I focused especially on the hair because I didn't. Sorry. I focused especially on the hair because I didn't like my last haircut. It was uneven at the bottom. Not that it mattered. I just wished I could do something about the hair when I morphed. Unfortunately, morphing doesn't work that way. The changes began quickly. The feathers that covered me began to melt. They ran together like hot wax. In some places, when my skin reappeared, it would have this beautiful feather pattern on it for a few seconds. My yellow bill sucked back into my mouth to become white teeth. That part sort of itched. It made me want to grind my teeth a few times. My lips grew out around my teeth. My eye my eyes went from pale gold to my normal blue. My legs grew quite a bit, from about 3 inches to normal size. I looked over at Jake and saw the same things happening to him. Let me just tell you, watching someone morph is not a pretty sight. It's the kind of thing that would give you screaming nightmares if you didn't know it was going to be all right. When Cassie morphs, she always does it kind of artistically. Like when she changes into a horse, she does it so that she doesn't pardon me. When she changes into a horse, she does it so it doesn't look totally creepazoid. I can't imagine how I had any difficulty reading that sentence from the 90s. She does it so it doesn't look totally creepazoid. She has a natural talent for morphing, if there is such a thing. The rest of us just let it happen however it happens. The results can be disturbing. I happened to see Marco at the moment where his hairy boy legs came shooting out of this little bird body, and I yelped, "Yeah, gross." You don't look so good yourself, Rachel. His mouth was morphing even as he spoke. So the first few words were garbled, and the last few were normal. I think what he said was, "Hey, you don't look so good yourself, Rachel." He was probably right. I was glad I didn't have a mirror. My tongue grew fat in my mouth, my eyesight became faded and dim. The eagle's mind evaporated, leaving me all alone in my head. My wings became arms, my talons became toes. The scaly yellow eagle legs became my own legs, only they were still all scaly at first. "Nice look, chicken legs," Marco said. "Do those come in extra crispy too?" I smiled at him. "You're not one to talk, Marco." I pointed down at the floor. See, his legs had changed back, but he still had huge osprey talons instead of feet. As my skin began to appear, so did my morphine outfit. Fortunately, after a few tries, we had all learned to morph some very minimal clothing. Usually, nothing more than skin-tight workout clothes or leotards. Not enough to go walking around in, but enough to keep us all from dying of embarrassment when we morphed in front of each other. I checked out my friends. They were mostly normal again, with just a few remaining hints that they'd been birds a minute earlier. Jake is kind of a big guy, strong looking, with brown hair and serious dark eyes, although at the moment his eyes were shining with excitement. Sometimes being in a morph just totally breaks you out. Jake was a lizard once, and he still hasn't gotten over the fact that he ate a live spider. But I guess he enjoyed being a falcon, because he was babbling on and on about how great it was. "That was so absolute," he said. "It's like now, being back in a human body, I feel like I'm handicapped or something. I feel like I'm glued to the ground." "And blind," Cassie agreed. "Human eyes are so lame for seeing things far away." She grinned and spread her wings. She had managed to keep her wings until the very end. Now she looked like some strange angel. Oddly, the look worked for her. The osprey's 5-foot gray and white wings were incredibly cool. Do you think you could fly? Jake asked her. He looked a little awestruck. Cassie laughed. No, Jake. This body weighs about 80 pounds. These wings aren't built for that kind of weight. She morphed her wings into arms in about 3 seconds flat and laughed gaily. Marco shook his head. Great. When we morph, we look like some mad scientist's genetic experiment gone totally crazy, and Cassie gets to look like an angel. Yeah, but Marco looks like some sort of half kid, half dog, half basketball, right? Cassie and I have been friends for a long time, although to look at us, you wouldn't think we'd hang out together. Cassie is casual to the extreme. The girl just doesn't care about clothing or style. I swear she would wear overalls to a wedding if somebody didn't stop her. Cassie lives on a farm and her whole family is massively into animals. Her dad used the barn to run the wildlife rehabilitation clinic, which is a kind of hospital for injured animals. It's always full of birds and skunks and opossums and coyotes and every other animal you can think of. Cassie's mom is a vet too. She works at the Gardens, this huge zoo and amusement park. So maybe Cassie was just born with an instinct for understanding animals. All I know is she's always finished morphing while the rest of us are still looking like creepy half human, half animal monsters. As for me, well, it's not that I'm Miss Fashion or whatever, but I do like nice clothes. I guess that plus I guess that plus the way I look makes a lot of people think I'm stuck up or something. People do think I'm pretty, but to me that's just an accident, you know? Looks are not the important thing. It's what's in your head that counts, and that's what I concentrate on. Of course, that's another area where Cassie and I are a little different. I guess she would say, no, it's what's in your heart that counts. She's a natural peacemaker. If there's ever a hassle within the group, it's usually sorry. If there's ever a hassle within the group, it's usually me and Marco that caused it, and Cassie who got us all to calm down. Personally, I'm glad to be back to my regular body, Marco said. The flying part is great, but it's not a good idea to be able to see that well. Why? Jake asked. Look, Jake, how many times have you been walking around the mall or whatever, and you'll see a girl who seems good looking from far off, but when you get closer, it turns out she's a skank? I mean, if you could see this well all the time. Excuse me, I interrupted. I'm sure, sorry. Excuse me, I interrupted. I'm sure I didn't hear you say what I thought you just said. I wasn't being sexist, Marco protested. It goes both ways. See, from far off, I look taller than I am. Marco is a little self conscious about being short. He has long brown hair and a dark complexion, and most girls think he's really cute, but being small bothers him. Your problem isn't with people seeing you too well, I said. It's with people hearing you too well. You look like a fairly smart guy, then you open your mouth. Marco just grinned. Marco lives to annoy people. He really is extremely smart and basically nice underneath it all. It's just that the boy loves to provoke people. Marco and Jake are best friends, even though Jake is serious and thoughtful and always trying to do what's right, while Marco is sarcastic and temperamental and is the most reluctant of the Animorphs. Marco still thinks we should just give up the battle against the Yeerks and try to stay alive. But with Marco, you never know if he really believes that or is just saying it to be contrary. Well, let's get out of here, Jake suggested. I have homework to do. Me too, I said. And I have gymnastics class this afternoon, and I'm totally unprepared. Cassie sighed. It's such a drag. The chores and the sorry. It's such a drag. The chores and the homework all come rushing back as soon as we change back into our boring human selves. As soon as she said it, Cassie bit her tongue. She cast a regretful look to Tobias. See, while all of us had changed back, Tobias hadn't. Tobias was still a hawk, Tobias, who had once had unruly blonde hair and eyes that Tobias, who had once had unruly blonde hair and eyes that seemed hurt and tender and hopeful all at once. Tobias had been trapped while trying to escape from the hellish nightmare of the Yerk pool. He had stayed more than 2 hours in that morph. We had all returned to our human forms, but Tobias was still a hawk. Tobias will always be a hawk. Chapter 3. We all walked most of the way home together, feeling worn out. The flying was a little tiring, and morphine always takes a lot out of you. Tobias flew high overhead. He didn't really participate in the conversation. It's hard for him. See, he can speak to us, and we can understand him, but when we're in human shape, we can only talk in the normal way. He can't hear us unless he's close by, and he can't be close and still fly. This morphing would be so excellent if it weren't for the whole thing with the Yerks, Marco was saying. I mean, if it were just normal, we could really use these powers. To do what? Fight crime? Jake asked. Marco looked at him with a mixture of pity and amusement. Fight crime? Who are you, Spider-Man? I'm talking show business. Movies, TV shows. I could go on Letterman. I could be an entire episode of Stupid Pet Tricks all by myself. You're right, I said, batting my eyes so he would know I was kidding. You already have the stupid part down. We'd be hot in horror movies, Cassie said. Or how about a stuntman, Jake suggested. One of us could jump off the tallest building and it would be totally realistic. Then we just morph into a bird on the way down and fly away. Now I'm really mad at the Yerks, Marco said. They're getting in the way of my showbiz career. I could be a millionaire. I could be trading funny lines with Dave. I could have beautiful Hollywood supermodels all over me. Uh-huh, I said with a wink at Cassie. Lots of women do love animals, but sooner or later you'd have to change back to your actual self, Marco, and then boom, they'd be out of there. We walked along the boulevard that goes by the construction site. It's this huge area of half-finished buildings with rusted earth movers and cranes and backhoes scattered around. I guess it was originally supposed to be a shopping center, but for some reason they never finished it. We didn't take the shortcut through the construction site, like we would have done in the old days. We didn't take the shortcut through the construction site. But we would have in the old days. We would have in the old days, though. See, it was at this construction site that we saw the Andalite Prince's damaged fighter land. It was here that the Andalite warned us of the Yerk conspiracy and gave us our special powers. It was also here that we saw the Yerk commander, Visser III, murder the Andalite Prince. Visser III is the only one of the Yerks who has our same power to morph. Visser III is an Andalite controller, meaning he has an Andalite body. A human controller is a Yerk with a human body. A taxon controller is a Yerk with a taxon body. You get the idea. Visser III is the only Yerk to ever capture an Andalite body, so he's also the only Yerk who can morph. That night at the construction site, he morphed into some creature from a far-off planet, a huge, horrible monster. And then he took the Andalite and... You know what? I really don't want to talk about that. You'll have to ask Jake. We all fell silent as we passed by the site. Then I noticed that Cassie had stopped walking and was just standing there. I went back to her and realized that she was crying. Are you okay? I asked. She shook her head. No. Are you? I sighed. Flying around in the sky had been a wonderful distraction, but my head was still full of awful memories. I guess not, I admitted. Last night, I had a terrible nightmare about the Yerk pool. I was back down there. down there in that vast open cave, and I was hearing the screams and cries of the people being dragged to the pool. Cassie nodded. You know what's worse than the screams? The way they stop screaming once the yerk is in their heads, once they become controllers. Then you know they're slaves again, lost. Like Tom. We both turned. It was Jake. He and Marco had seen us stop and had come back. Tom is Jake's brother. Tom is a human controller. A human being enslaved by a yerk in his head. We had found the yerk pool and gone down into that hell to get Tom. We'd failed. We'd barely escaped with our lives. Cassie put her arm around Jake's waist. Someday we'll save Tom, she said. Jake kind of stroked Cassie's head. I guess he got embarrassed because he instantly pulled away. Cassie didn't mind. She knows how guys are about showing their feelings. I looked across the construction site and saw Tobias come fluttering down out of the sky. I couldn't see where he landed because that part of the site was hidden from the road, but I knew right where he was, on the spot where the Andalite had died. Somehow, in those brief moments when the Andalite had been with us, Tobias had formed some kind of special bond with him. We started walking again. We need to find another way to get at them, I said angrily. It bothered me, imagining Tobias back in that maze of never-finished buildings, mourning for the Andalite. Get at who? Marco asked suspiciously. The French, Marco, I said sarcastically. Who do you think? The Yerks, duh. Whoa, Marco said. We tried that. Remember? We went down into the Yerk pool after them and got our butts kicked. Yerks 10, humans 0. So you figure we should just give up? I demanded. We lost one game, Jake said. You don't quit the sport just because you lose one game. Some game, Marco said bitterly. Some sport. We didn't lose anyway, I said. The others looked at me like I was crazy. Look, I explained. I know we didn't save Tom, and we sure didn't stop the Yerks, but we gave them a reason to be afraid, at least. Yeah, they're terrified of us. Visser 3 probably can't sleep at night. He's so worried about 5 kids, Marco said sarcastically. Look, Visser 3 doesn't think we're a threat. He thinks we're lunch. He doesn't know who or what we are, I pointed out. The Yerks are convinced that we're Andalite warriors because they know that we can morph. The Yerks are convinced that we're Andalite warriors because they know that we can morph, and they know that we found the Yerk pool and infiltrated it and took out a few of their taxon in Hork-Bajir while we were at it. I think they're probably a little nervous, at least. Jake nodded. Rachel's right, but just the same, I don't think we want to try to go back to the Yerk pool. Besides, the door is gone. We all stopped and stared at him. He shrugged. Look, I just wanted to see if the door still worked, okay? Just in case. But it's not there anymore. The door leading down to the Yerk pool had been hidden in the janitor's closet of our school. There were dozens of doors to the underground Yerk pool, spread all over the city, but this was the only one we knew about. So we find another way to get at them, I said. We can follow Tom again. When it's time for his Yerk to return to the Yerk pool. Yerks have to go to the Yerk pool every 3 days. They drain out of their hosts' heads and soak up Kandrona rays. No, we leave Tom out of it, Jake said firmly. If we call attention to him in any way, the Yerks may decide he's trouble for them. They may decide to kill him. Marco gave me a sour look. This is what you want to keep doing? Risking our lives and the lives of everyone we know? For what? For freedom, Cassie said simply. Marco didn't have a smart answer to that. There is still Chapman, Jake said. Chapman is our assistant principal. He's also one of the Chapman is our assistant principal. He's also one of the most important human controllers. He runs The Sharing, the club that helps recruit unsuspecting kids into being hosts for the Yerks. If there was some way for us to get close to if there was some way for us to get close to Chapman, Jake let the words hang in the air. He carefully didn't look at me, but I knew what he meant. He'd obviously been thinking about this for a while. Melissa? I asked. He nodded. It's a possibility. See, Melissa Chapman, Assistant Principal Chapman's daughter, is one of my closest friends. Or at least she used to be. The last few months she'd been acting very strange toward me, like she didn't care anymore. We take gymnastics together. Actually, we got into it at the same time. You know, something to do together. I don't like using a friend that way, I said. Oh, suddenly the mighty Rachel is weaseling, Marco crowed. You don't like using your friends? You're pretty willing to risk my life. Sure, Marco, but who said you were my friend? Very funny, Marco said, but at the same time he looked a little hurt. Kidding, Marco, I said. Just kidding. Of course you're my friend. But you're an Animorph. Melissa's just an innocent bystander. I wish I had never come up with that word, Marco said. Animorph. Give me a break. Rachel, Melissa's father is one of the main controllers, Jake said gently, ignoring Marco. She's already in this, whether she likes it or not. I felt a bitter taste in my mouth. Jake was right, of course. Chapman was the logical lead to follow, and Melissa was our way to get close. It made sense. It made sense for me to betray an old friend. It also made me feel like dirt. Chapter 4. The next day after school, I headed for my gymnastics class at the YMCA, which is just across from the mall. They have a big indoor pool, so the entire building always smells of chlorine, except for the weight room, which just smells like sweat. My class is taught in a smaller room, with blue mats covering the floor. We have balance beam and uneven parallel bars. Sorry, let me just take a break for a few seconds before I get right back into the next chapter. My class is taught in a smaller room, with blue mats covering the floor. We have a balance beam, an uneven parallel bars, and a vaulting horse with a springboard. I'm okay at vaulting and the parallel bars, but I'm pretty lame at the balance beam. To be honest with you, it kind of scares me. It takes such total concentration. It's not one of those real serious gymnastics classes. I mean, none of us is going to be going to the Olympics. When I started out, I had dreams of being the next Shannon Miller, but then I started to grow. I'm pretty tall now for my age. People look at me now and say, "Oh, you're going to be a model," not, "Oh, you could be a gymnast." Most of us in the class are too tall or too heavy to ever be serious gymnasts. We do it for fun and for exercise. I do it because I've always thought of myself as kind of clumsy. My mom says I'm not, but that's how I feel anyway. Besides, it's just cool, hitting the little springboard and flipping through the air to bounce off the vaulting horse and stick the landing. Not as cool as flying, maybe, but fun just the same. Can confirm. Melissa Chapman was in the locker room, changing into her leotard when I came in. She's the exception to the rule in our class. She does look like a gymnast. She's small and thin. She's a star of herself, like some fools who want to get into gymnastics. She has pale gray eyes and pale blonde hair and pale skin. She looks like one of those solemn elves in a Tolkien book. At first glance, she looks delicate, but when you look a little closer, you see strength there too. Melissa gave me the kind of not very warm smile she always gives me lately, like she was distracted or thinking about something more important. Hey, Melissa, I said, how's it going? Fine. How about you? Oh, pretty much the same old thing. That was a lie, of course, but what was I going to say? Yeah, Melissa, same old, same old. Been turning into animals and fighting aliens. You know, the usual. Melissa didn't say anything else. She just adjusted her leotard and started to do a few little stretches. That's the way it was. We said hi, but not much more. It used to be we were very close. She was my second best friend after Cassie. Melissa, I was thinking maybe you'd like to walk over to the mall with me after class. I have to buy a new pair of sneaks. The mall? She stammered a little and then started blushing. You mean go shopping? Yeah, walk around and look at stuff and check out the cute guys and diss the snotty women at the perfume counters. I tried to. Sorry, that was not as much of a question as I made it. I tried to sound casual, like it was no big deal. In the old days, it would have been totally nothing, but now Melissa looked like a trapped animal. When had Melissa and I gotten to be such strangers? I'm kind of busy, Melissa said. Oh, that's cool. I understand. But I didn't understand. Not at all. She started she started to walk away. I was going to let it go, but then I remembered this wasn't just about a friend who had drifted away. This was about her father, one of the leading controllers, one of our most dangerous enemies. I grabbed her arm. Melissa, look, I feel like we've kind of gone in different ways, and I miss you. She shrugged. Okay, well, maybe we could go together sometime. Not sometime, Melissa. That's just blowing me off. What is going on with you? What's going on with me? She echoed. For a moment, a look of extraordinary sadness darkened her eyes and tugged downward at the corners of her mouth. Nothing's going on with me, she said. We'd better get out there or Coach Elway will have a fit. She pulled her arm away. I just watched her go. I felt like a complete and total jerk. Something had happened to Melissa, and I hadn't even noticed. She was my friend, and something had changed in her, and I hadn't seen it. I'd just gone my own way. And now, even now, I was only acting like a concerned friend. The truth was, I was only paying attention for my own reasons. I wasn't a I wasn't able to concentrate on the lesson. Not concentrating when you're doing gymnastics can be painful. I slipped on the balance beam and banged my knee so badly I cried. Melissa was the first one to rush over, and for about 10 seconds she was the old Melissa. But by the time I'd gotten back up, she was off across the room in her own little world again. It was right then that the terrible suspicion started. Melissa had been acting very strangely. Her father was a controller. I looked at her from across the room and felt a chill. Was she one too? Was my old friend Melissa a controller? I didn't go shopping after my lesson. I didn't really feel like it. Melissa's eyes, the way she had looked at me, kind of killed my urge to shop. I was supposed to head over to the mall. I was supposed to head over to the mall, then call my mom when I was done to come pick me up. That was the plan. But since I didn't feel like mall crawling, I just headed home. Alone, with the sky growing dark as rain clouds moved in. It was stupid and careless of me, but I guess I was preoccupied with other things. Although at, although at least I had the sense to stay out of the construction site. I was walking down the sidewalk that ru- I was walking down the sidewalk that runs along the boulevard when suddenly I realized that a car had pulled up just a little way down the sidewalk from me. A guy got out. He looked like he was in high school or even college. He also looked like trouble. I should have turned around and run back toward the wall, but sometimes I don't always do the sensible thing. Sometimes I regret not doing the sensible thing. This was one of those times. Hey, baby, he said. Want to go for a little ride? I shook my head and clenched my gym bag close. What an idiot I was to be so careless. Now, don't be stuck up, sweet thing, he said. I think you'd better get in the car. The way he said it didn't sound like it was an invitation. It sounded like an order. Now I was really afraid. I clutched my gym bag close as I passed him. Don't ignore me, he hissed. He reached for me and missed. I walked faster. He was behind me. I broke into a run. He ran after me. Hey! Hey there! Come back here! I had been stupid for going out alone. But fortunately, unlike most people, I wasn't helpless. As I ran, I focused on something completely different. I concentrated on an image in my mind. Then I felt the change begin. My legs grew thick. My arms grew bigger. I could feel myself growing large and solid. I felt the squirmy sensation of my ears becoming thin and leathery. But it wasn't enough to just look creepy. This guy had made me mad. I wanted to scare him half to death. My nose suddenly began to sprout. Then, from my mouth, like two huge spears, the tusks began to appear. I figured that was about enough. I broke my concentration, which stopped the morph. I stopped suddenly. The creep barreled right into me. He was not going to like what he was about to see. Okay, I think one more chapter. Chapter 5. I wanted to tell the jerk to step off. What I wanted to say to him was, so, you still want to go for that ride? What I really said was, the guy stopped dead. He just stared. What he saw was me, halfway through morphing into an African elephant. I had about a third of a trunk and most of my huge fan-like elephant ears. My legs were like stumps. My arms looked like Arnold Schwarzenegger's, only gray. And my tusks stuck about a foot out of my mouth. Just to make things extra weird, I still had my normal hair and my normal eyes. Suddenly, the guy wasn't interested in hassling me. Ah! He turned, he ran. For a minute, he forgot he even had a car. Then he turned around and jumped in through an open window. He started the car and took off. He was definitely breaking the speed limit as he tore out of there. I concentrated again and began to reverse the morphine process, going back to human shape. I had been wearing a loose sweater and leggings, which was good. They had both stretched, but my shoes had been split open by the sudden growth of my elephant feet. It had started raining, so the trip home was going to be very unpleasant. Oh, great, I muttered. I have got to remember to kick off my shoes before I morph into an elephant. Just then, a second car pulled up and came to a stop. The window rolled down. Hey, Rachel. It was Melissa. I recognized the voice. Do you want to ride home? She didn't sound very excited by the idea. I looked through the car window, past her. Chapman was behind the wheel. A wave of sick fear swept over me. Had he seen what I'd just done? If he had, then I was dead. My friends were dead. I'm fine, I said. I could use the exercise. Nonsense, young lady, Chapman said, sounding like his usual assistant principal self. It's beginning to rain. Get in. What was I supposed to do? I forced a smile. It wasn't easy. Thanks, I said. Melissa was sitting in the front with her father. I sat in the back. I tried not to shiver. I tried not to stare at the back of Chapman's head. That's how it is when you're around a controller. You know that evil slug is right there on the controller's head, attached to all his nerve endings, controlling the human brain, dominating it. It's hard not to stare when you think of what is squeezed inside that skull. Hmm. Oh, when we were stuck back at the red light, it looked like some guy was bothering you, Melissa said. Then he ran off. Was he bothering you? No, I lied. He was just picking up something he dropped by the side of the road. Pathetic. I was such a lame liar. I saw Chapman's eyes watching me in the rearview mirror. He looked like normal old Chapman. That's the problem with controllers. There is no outward clue. They look so normal. He went running off like the hounds of Hades were after him, Chapman said. Did he? I said in a squeaky voice. I wasn't looking. I guess it was the rain. That's probably why he was running. There, you can turn left. There. I know where you live, Chapman said. I almost swallowed my tongue. Was that a threat? Did he suspect? Did he guess? Was he looking at me strangely? Or was I just being paranoid? He pulled up in front of my house. My heart was hammering, but I was determined to act casual. Thanks for the ride, Mr. Chapman, I said. Hey, Melissa, I was totally serious about us getting together, okay? She nodded. Sure, Rachel. Absolutely. I closed the car door behind me. I had escaped. I was alive. I'd probably just been imagining things. Then I heard Melissa call out to me. Hey, what happened to your shoes? I looked down. My shoes were in tatters, the result of my feet growing from a size 6 to a size 300 in about 5 seconds flat. See? I said as lightly as I could. I told you I needed to go shopping for sneaks. Melissa just looked puzzled. Her father stared at me with an expression I could not read. I was shaking like a leaf when I walked into my house. I headed upstairs to my room and stuffed my ripped shoes into the trash. Only then did I go back downstairs and say hi to my mom. She was at the kitchen table, half hidden by a pile of buff-colored books. My mother's a lawyer, and she brings work home a lot so she can be around me and my 2 little sisters. She and my dad are divorced. I only get to see my dad a few days a month. So Mom feels guilty when she isn't there for us. Hi, honey, she said. Then she got her suspicious mother look. How did you get home? You didn't walk, did you? You were supposed to call me. Melissa and her dad gave me a ride, I said. Well, it was the truth, sort of. She relaxed and made a point of closing her book. Sorry, you know I worry about you. Where are Jordan and Sarah? They're in the family room watching another one of those scary shows. Of course, tonight Jordan will be sleeping with her nightlight on, and Sarah will end up in my bed, no doubt. I don't know why they like things that frighten them. You were never that way. It almost made me laugh. I felt like saying, well, Mom, I don't have to watch things that are scary. I am scary. Should have seen me a little while ago with tusks sticking out of my mouth and a 3-foot-long nose. What I really said was, so, what's for dinner? My mother winced. Pizza? Chinese? Anything else you can order over the phone? I'm sorry, but I have this brief and I have court in the morning. Mom, I told her for maybe the 1,000th time, I don't mind pizza. Sorry, but your cooking isn't all that great, so it's no big deal ordering pizza. Well, at least get some veggies on it, she said. After dinner, I called Jake. Do you want to come over? I said. I got that new CD if you want to listen to it. There was no new CD, of course. It's just that we always have to be careful. Like I said, Jake's brother Tom is a controller. He could be listening on the extension. Then I called Cassie and Marco and told them the same cover story. When they arrived, I told them about Melissa, and then I told them about my little run-in with the creep. I did not tell them about Chapman driving me home. I don't know why, but when I saw the way Marco exploded, I was glad I hadn't told them the whole of the story. Oh, that was dumb. Dumb, Marco said. What if that guy was a controller? He wasn't a controller, I said scornfully. Why would the Yeerks want to make a controller out of a punk? They want people in positions of power. We don't know that for sure, Jake said. Tom isn't in a position of power. And how about people driving by in their cars or looking out of the windows of their homes? Marco asked. And what if he runs and tells someone about this girl who suddenly sprouted a trunk and tusks? No one is going to believe a lowlife like that, I said. His friends won't believe him, Marco said, poisonously. But a controller would believe him. A controller would know what it meant. Yes, a controller would know what it meant. A controller like Chapman, or even Melissa, if she was one of them. I felt sick. It was like my whole life was nothing but lies. Lies to Melissa, lies to my mother. Now I was lying by not telling the others the whole truth. Okay, I screwed up, I muttered. You sure did, Marco crowed. You screwed up so... Marco, let it drop, Jake said. Rachel knows she made a mistake. We all make mistakes. Marco rolled his eyes. Cassie gave me an encouraging smile. It was dumb putting yourself in that position, right? Oh, the 90s. The 90s hurt sometimes. Cassie gave me an encouraging smile. It was dumb putting yourself in that position, Rachel. You do need to be more careful. But still, I'd have paid my next 10 allowances to see the look on that guy's face. The important thing is that it doesn't sound like Rachel can use Melissa to get close to Chapman, Jake said. Not if she's a controller herself. And not if she's going to continue being weird to Rachel. I guess we'll have to find another way, I said quickly. I mean, we know where Chapman's office is. We know where his house is. Maybe we could just morph into some small animals and hide out. Small animals like what? Marco asked. When Jake turned into a lizard, he got stepped on. He lost his tail. Besides, what are you going to morph into? A cockroach? We all shuddered at the thought. The smallest, strangest thing anyone had morphed so far was when Jake had done the lizard. It creeped him out big time. A roach would be even worse. The problem with being a cockroach, I said, aside from the fact that is too gross to believe, is that roach senses might not even be useful to us. Can a roach hear in a way that would make it possible for us to understand what we're hearing? We all looked at Cassie. She's sort of our resident expert on animals. Cassie held up her hands. Oh, come on. Like I know how a cockroach sees and hears. We don't take care of a lot of roaches at the rehab clinic. We all sat there feeling glum for a few minutes, but I wasn't going to let it drop. This was about more than just striking a blow at the Yeerks. I had to find out if Chapman suspected me. If he did, we were all in terrible danger. I happened to glance over at my desk. There was my math homework, still not done. That didn't make me feel any better. But then I looked at the photos I had mounted in one of those big frames with 6 different holes. One was of me with my mom and dad on a whitewater rafting trip we took. One was of me visiting my dad at his job. He's a weatherman on TV. We were grinning in front of a map of storms. Another picture was of me and Cassie riding horses side by side, with Cassie, as usual, looking like she'd spent her entire life in the saddle, and me looking like a total dweeb. But the picture that got my attention was one taken a couple of years ago, of Melissa and me. I got up and went over to take the frame down. I stared hard at the picture. What? Jake asked. What is it? It's me and Melissa, I said. It was like her 12th birthday, or some birthday anyway, and we were out on the lawn playing with the present her dad gave her. So what? Marco asked. So I passed him the photograph. It showed me and Melissa in shorts, and between us, a small black and white kitten. So her present was a cat. Okay, that takes us past 8 o'clock, so I will call it a night and let us all get on with whatever else we had planned this evening. Yes, I'm glad you're excited for the kitty. There he is. Yeah, yes. What else we have on this evening is just going to bed. I am already in my pajamas. But thank you so much for joining me. I don't know if, anybody else listening notices any difference, but I do feel like, I don't know, I feel like I'm getting a little bit faster and more comfortable at the sight reading. So I feel like it's good to just develop and maintain these healthy sight reading habits until it doesn't feel so hard anymore. Okay. Well, good night, and I will probably post something to see sort of what days next week work best, and might do 2 hours of reading on 2 evenings next week. Thank you very much. And hello, Peter. Thank you for also listening in. We'll see you again soon.